The city lights flickered to life as I stood on the rooftop, the cool evening breeze rustling my hair. Below me, the metropolis hummed with an energy that was both familiar and distant. I had spent weeks meticulously planning this anniversary party for Victoria, my wife of 5 years. The venue was perfect, an exclusive rooftop bar with a panoramic view of the skyline. The kind of place that made you feel like you were on top of the world. I had thought of every detail, from the custom cake designed to mimic the swirl of our favorite gelato flavor to the live band playing soft jazz in the corner. This was supposed to be our night, a celebration of our love and the life we had built together. As the guests began to arrive, I greeted them with a smile that felt plastered on, my nerves buzzing with anticipation. Victoria looked radiant in the dress we had picked out together months ago, her laughter echoing through the crowd as she mingled with friends and colleagues. I watched her from a distance, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. This was what marriage was about, right? Making each other happy, supporting each other's dreams, and standing by each other through thick and thin. The band struck up a lively tune as Victoria took the microphone, her voice clear and confident as she thanked everyone for coming. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my heart swelling with love and admiration. But as she began to speak, my world started to crumble. "I want to thank someone special tonight," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd before landing on Lucas, her colleague. "Lucas, you've been my guiding light, my rock through the toughest times. I couldn't have done it without you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there, frozen, as the crowd murmured in agreement, oblivious to the turmoil raging inside me. Lucas, the guy she had mentioned casually in conversations, the one I had never thought twice about, was now the center of her universe. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as the reality of her words sank in. Victoria turned to me, a smirk playing on her lips, and handed me a gift bag. "And for you, honey," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. The crowd chuckled, thinking it was all part of some elaborate joke. I took the bag, my hands shaking, and pulled out a black t-shirt. As I unfolded it, the word divorce stared back at me in bold white letters. The room went silent for a moment before nervous laughter filled the air. I stood there, the t-shirt clutched in my hands, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes on me. The humiliation was overwhelming, a physical force that threatened to crush me. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the burning sensation in my throat as I fought to maintain my composure. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The man who had spent years bending over backwards to make Victoria happy, the one who had sacrificed his own dreams and desires to support hers, was gone. In his place stood a man who had been betrayed, humiliated, and discarded. I set the bag down, reached into my pocket, and pulled out the Cartier bracelet I had bought for Victoria as her real anniversary gift. It was gold, sleek, and expensive, a symbol of my love and devotion. I placed it on the table next to the cake, where everyone could see it, and walked out without a word. The cool night air hit me like a slap in the face as I stepped outside, my shoes clicking against the pavement. I could hear the chatter fading behind me, the clink of glasses, and the hum of confusion. I kept walking, my heart pounding in my chest, the city lights blurring into a kaleidoscope of color. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going back in there. Not for her, not for anyone. As I made my way through the crowded streets, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it, the vibrations a stark reminder of the life I was leaving behind. By the time I reached my car, the notifications had become relentless, a constant stream of missed calls and messages from Victoria. I turned off my phone, the silence hitting me like a wave. I slid into the driver's seat, the engine humming to life as I pulled out onto the street. The city lights blurred past me, a distant echo of the life I had known. I drove aimlessly, the road stretching out before me like a dark, empty promise. As I merged onto the highway, the weight of the night's events began to settle in. The t-shirt, the bracelet, the look on Victoria's face as she handed me that bag, it all played on a loop in my mind, a cruel reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my world. But as the miles ticked by, something else began to take root: a determination to reclaim my life, to forge a new path that was authentic and true to who I was. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let this define me. I was more than the sum of Victoria's betrayal, more than the humiliation I had endured. I was a man on a mission, a phoenix rising from the ashes of a broken marriage, ready to take on the world and rebuild my life on my own terms. And so, with the city lights fading in the rearview mirror, I drove into the night, leaving behind the echoes of betrayal and embracing the promise of a new. The first light of dawn filtered through the blinds, casting a soft glow on the unfamiliar walls of Alex's spare bedroom. I had driven straight to his place, after leaving the party, my phone still off, Those 157 missed calls locked away in the dark. Alex didn't ask many questions when I showed up, just opened the door, handed me a beer, and let me crash on his couch. Now, as I lay there, the events of the night before played out in my mind like a bad movie, each scene more painful than the last. Alex shuffled into the room, his hair disheveled, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He set one down on the table next to me, the steam curling up in lazy swirls. "You don't come back from something like that," he said, his voice low and certain, like he'd already thought it through. I didn't answer right away, just took the coffee, the heat burning my fingers through the mug, and let his words sink in. He was right. I knew it the second Victoria handed me the t-shirt, the word divorced emblazoned across the front like some cruel joke. It wasn't just the shirt, it was everything before it, all the pieces I'd ignored because I loved her, because I thought that's what you do when you're married. I sipped the coffee, bitter and strong, and my mind started replaying it all. There was the time she'd asked me to move cities for her job, promising it would be worth it. I'd left a good gig behind, packed up our life, and followed her, believing in the dream she sold me. Then there were the promotions I'd turned down because they'd mean less time at home, and she didn't like that. "We're a team," she'd say, and I'd nod, thinking it made sense. Vacations too, I'd skip them, working extra shifts so she could chase her dreams, fly off to conferences, build her career. I never complained. I figured it was my job to support her, to be the steady one while she shined. And she did shine. People loved her charm, her laugh, the way she could light up a room. I loved that about her too. But last night, under those twinkling lights I'd paid for, she'd lit up for someone else. Lucas Rivera, her guiding light, not me. I set the mug down, my hands still shaky from the night before, and looked at Alex. "I gave her everything," I said, my voice rough like it hadn't woken up yet. He nodded, leaning back in the armchair that creaked under his weight. "Yeah, man," he said. "And she gave you a t-shirt." That stung, but it was true. I thought about the party again, minus 60 people all watching her toast Lucas, all seeing her hand me that bag. I wondered what they thought. Did they laugh because they agreed with her? Did they feel sorry for me? Or did they just not care? The spare room felt smaller then, the walls pressing in, and I stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, the city was waking up, cars honking, people rushing to work, the familiar hum of life going on. My life used to feel like that, busy, purposeful, moving forward. Now it was just me, standing still, holding a coffee mug and a bruised ego. Alex watched me, sipping his own drink, not pushing me to talk. He didn't have to, we'd been friends since college. He knew me better than most, what I was thinking, what I was feeling. "What now?" he asked finally, breaking the silence. I didn't have an answer, not yet, but as I stared out at the skyline, something shifted. I wasn't the guy who waited around anymore, the one who nodded and smiled while she called the shots. That guy walked out last night. The bracelet was still in my pocket. I felt its weight against my leg, a reminder of what I'd taken back. Maybe Alex was right, you don't come back from something like that. But maybe you don't have to. Maybe you just keep walking, figure out who you are without the weight of someone else's spotlight. I turned to him, my jaw tight. "I'm done being disposable," I said. He raised his mug. "Good. About time," he replied. I didn't turn my phone back on for 2 days after the party. Those 157 missed calls sat there waiting, but I wasn't ready to face them or her. I stayed at Alex's, sleeping on that creaky couch, waking up to the sound of his coffee maker gurgling in the kitchen. It was quiet there, simple, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to be anywhere or do anything for someone else. But I couldn't hide forever. I had a life to sort out, a marriage to end, and I wasn't about to let it drag on any louder than it already had. So I made a call, not to her, but to Clara Mendes, a lawyer I'd heard about through a guy at work. She was sharp, tough, the kind of woman who didn't mess around. We met at her office downtown, a small space with big windows and stacks of files on every surface. She didn't smile much, just shook my hand and got straight to it. "What's your goal here?" she asked, pen poised over a notepad. I leaned back in the chair, the bracelet still in my pocket like a stone I couldn't shake. "I want out," I said. "Clean, quiet, no drama." She nodded like she'd heard it 100 times before. "Good. I don't do loud divorces, they're a waste of time." I liked her already. I told her about the party, the t-shirt, Lucas, everything. She didn't flinch, just scribbled notes and asked questions: how long we'd been married, what we owned, who paid for what. I told her I'd covered most of it, the apartment, the cars, the party itself. Clara raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. By the end of the hour she had a plan. "We'll file quietly," she said. "No public mess. You keep what's yours, she keeps what's hers. If she fights, we'll deal with it. For her, it was business. For me, it was survival. I left her office feeling lighter, like I'd handed over a weight I didn't know I was carrying. That night, I moved back into our apartment, though it didn't feel like ours anymore. She wasn't there, probably at her sister's or some friend's place, licking her wounds after I didn't pick up. I didn't care where she was, I just wanted my space back. The next morning, I went to work. I'd taken a day off after the party, but now I was ready to dive in. My job wasn't glamorous project management for a tech firm, but I was good at it. I walked into the office, past the cubicles and the coffee machine, and sat at my desk. My inbox was a mess, but I didn't mind. I started sorting through emails, flagging the urgent ones, setting up meetings. It felt good to focus on something I could control. Around noon, my boss, Gregory, stopped by. He was a big guy, loud voice, always wearing ties that didn't quite match his shirts. "You're back," he said, leaning against my desk. "Heard you had a rough weekend." I shrugged. "Something like that." He didn't push, just tapped the folder he was holding. "Got a new client, tough one. You want it?" Normally I'd hesitate. Big clients meant long hours, and Victoria had always hated when I worked late. But she wasn't here now. "Yeah," I said. "I'll take it." Gregory grinned. "That's what I like to hear." The rest of the day flew by. I dug into the project, some startup needing a full system overhaul, and lost myself in the details. Spreadsheets, timelines, budgets. It was messy, complicated, and exactly what I needed. By the time I left the office, the sun was gone, and my head was clear. I stopped answering her texts that week. They'd started after the call, short ones at first, like "Where are you?" and "We need to talk." Then longer, rambling ones about how she didn't mean it, how it was just a joke. I didn't reply. Claire had the papers ready by Friday, and I signed them in her office, my hand steady on the pen. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about her anymore. It was about me, about taking back the life I'd let slip away. As I walked out of Claire's office, I felt a sense of finality. The divorce was in motion, and there was no turning back. I drove home, the city lights blurring past me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was reclaiming my life, one step at a time, and though the journey was far from over, I was ready to face whatever came next. The divorce papers were filed, and a strange calm settled over my life. I was no longer tethered to the constant chaos of Victoria's whims and demands. Instead, I found myself in a quiet apartment, with the freedom to shape my days as I saw fit. It was both liberating and daunting, a blank canvas waiting to be filled with the colors of my choosing. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the structure and predictability of project management. Gregory had given me a challenging client, a startup with big dreams and a messy operational structure. I dug into the details, creating spreadsheets, timelines, and budgets that would bring order to their chaos. The late nights at the office were no longer a source of contention. Instead, they were a testament to my dedication and a pathway to my own growth. As I settled into my new routine, I began to notice the subtle ways in which I had been holding myself back. I had always been the steady one, the reliable partner who put everyone else's needs before my own. But now I was learning to prioritize myself, to say no when necessary, and to pursue the things that brought me joy and fulfillment. One morning, as I stood in front of the mirror, I noticed the subtle changes in my physique. The stress of the past few months had taken a toll, but there was also a newfound strength in my eyes, a determination that hadn't been there before. I decided to channel that energy into something productive and signed up for a local running group. The first few runs were brutal. My lungs burned, my legs felt like lead, and I thought about turning back more than once. But I kept going, one step after another, the cool morning air biting at my face. With each mile, I shed the weight of the past, the echoes of Victoria's betrayal fading into the background. Running became a form of therapy, a way to process my emotions and clear my mind. As I grew stronger physically, I also began to explore other aspects of my life that had been neglected. I reconnected with old friends, picking up conversations that had been left hanging for years. Alex and I started having regular game nights, where we would laugh and reminisce about simpler times. I even dusted off my old guitar, the one that had been gathering dust in the corner of the living room, and started playing again. The music filled the empty spaces in the apartment, a melody of hope and renewal. But it wasn't just about rediscovering old passions. I also found myself drawn to new challenges. I met Jamie and Olivia, two ambitious young entrepreneurs with a startup idea that had the potential to disrupt the local delivery industry. They were full of energy and enthusiasm but lacked the organizational skills to bring their vision to life. I saw in them a reflection of my own journey, the struggle to find one's footing in a world that often seemed indifferent to our dreams. I offered to mentor them, using my experience in project management to help them navigate the complexities of starting a business. We met once a week, going over budgets, timelines, and strategic plans. I found a sense of purpose in guiding them, in helping them avoid the pitfalls that I had encountered in my own career. Their gratitude was a balm to my wounded ego, a reminder that I had value beyond the roles I had played in the past. As I continued to invest in myself and others, I began to see the world through a different lens. The city that had once felt overwhelming and indifferent now seemed full of opportunities and possibilities. I started to notice the beauty in the everyday, the way the sun filtered through the leaves in the park, the laughter of children playing in the street, the sense of community that existed just beneath the surface of our busy lives. One evening, as I sat at my desk, I found myself compelled to write. I opened my laptop and started typing, the words pouring out of me like a river breaking through a dam. I wrote about the pain of betrayal, the struggle to find my footing in the aftermath of a shattered marriage, and the journey of self-discovery that had followed. It was raw and honest, a stark contrast to the polished persona I had maintained for so long. As I read over what I had written, I realized that my story was not unique. There were others out there who had experienced the same pain, the same sense of loss and disillusionment. I felt a sudden urge to share my journey, to offer a beacon of hope to those who were still navigating the dark waters of heartbreak. And so, I created a blog, a space where I could share my thoughts, my struggles, and my triumphs. I called it 157 Missed Calls, a nod to the voicemails that had gone unanswered in the wake of Victoria's betrayal. I hit publish on the first post, feeling a mix of trepidation and exhilaration. It was a leap of faith, a way to reclaim my voice and share my truth with the world. The response was overwhelming. Within days, the blog had garnered hundreds of views, and the comments section was filled with messages of support and gratitude. People from all walks of life reached out to me, sharing their own stories of heartbreak and resilience. I was no longer just Ethan, the project manager with a failed marriage. I was Ethan, the writer, the mentor, the symbol of hope and renewal. As the blog gained traction, I began to receive invitations to speak at local events and workshops. I accepted them eagerly, seeing each opportunity as a chance to connect with others and share my message of empowerment. I spoke about the importance of self-care, the power of community, and the transformative potential of embracing one's pain. With each speech, I grew more confident in my voice and my purpose. I was no longer the man who had stood silently by as his wife publicly humiliated him. I was a phoenix rising from the ashes, a testament to the power of resilience and self-discovery. And as I looked out at the sea of faces before me, I knew that my journey was far from over, but I was ready to embrace whatever came next, with open arms and an unbreakable spirit. The months that followed were a whirlwind of growth and discovery. My blog, 157 Missed Calls, had become more than just a personal outlet. It was a community, a safe space where people from all walks of life could share their stories of heartbreak and resilience. The comments section was filled with tales of triumph and struggle, each one a testament to the power of the human spirit. I found myself drawn to these stories, responding to as many as I could, offering words of encouragement and support. As the blog gained traction, so did my public speaking engagements. I found myself standing before audiences at conferences and workshops, sharing my journey and the lessons I had learned along the way. Each event was a reminder of how far I had come, from the man who had stood silently at that rooftop party to the confident speaker who now commanded the stage. The applause that followed each speech was more than just acknowledgement. It was a validation of my transformation, a testament to the power of reclaiming one's narrative. One evening, as I sat at my desk, sifting through emails and messages from readers, I received an invitation that would change the trajectory of my journey. It was from a prestigious organization, inviting me to deliver a keynote speech at a conference in Milan. The theme of the conference was rebuilding after betrayal, and they wanted me to share my story. I stared at the email, a mix of excitement and disbelief coursing through my veins. This was more than just an opportunity to speak. It was a chance to take my message to a global stage, to inspire others on an international scale. I accepted the invitation without hesitation, knowing that this was the next step in my journey. The weeks leading up to the conference were a flurry of preparation, crafting my speech, rehearsing my delivery, and ensuring that every word resonated with the authenticity of my experience. I poured my heart into the process, determined to make the most of this opportunity. The day of the conference arrived, and I found myself standing backstage in Milan, the hum of the audience seeping through the heavy curtain. My hands were steady, but my heart thumped with a mix of anticipation and excitement. As the stage manager gave me the nod, I stepped out into the lights, the applause washing over me like a wave. I looked out at the sea of faces, each one a reflection of the journey I had undertaken, and began to speak. I once paid for a birthday party where I received a t-shirt labeled divorced. I started, my voice clear and strong. The audience laughed softly, a ripple of empathy and understanding. I continued sharing the raw and honest details of my journey from the humiliation of that night to the empowerment I had found in reclaiming my life. I spoke about the 157 missed calls, the blog that had become a lifeline for so many, and the community that had formed around our shared experiences. As I delved deeper into my story, the audience leaned in, their eyes fixed on me, their hearts open to my message. I could feel the connection, the shared understanding that transcended language and culture. We were all, in our own ways, seeking to rebuild, to rise from the ashes of our past and forge a new path forward. Betrayal doesn't end you, I said, looking out at the audience. It's a door you decide if you walk through it. It's a choice to keep going, to rebuild, to find the strength within yourself to overcome the pain and emerge stronger. The words flowed effortlessly, a testament to the journey I had undertaken and the person I had become. As I concluded my speech, the applause roared through the hall, a thunderous acknowledgement of the power of resilience and empowerment. I stepped back, my chest tight with emotion, knowing that I had not only shared my story but had also inspired others to embrace their own journeys of healing and growth. Backstage, I was swarmed by organizers, attendees, and even a few reporters eager to speak with me. I agreed to a few interviews, sharing my insights and experiences with a broader audience. Each conversation was a reminder of the impact of my journey, the ripple effect of my transformation on the lives of others. Later that evening, as I sat in my hotel room, the city lights of Milan glittering outside my window, I reflected on the journey that had led me to this moment. I thought about the party, the t-shirt, the divorce, and the blog that had become a beacon of hope for so many. I thought about Jamie and Olivia, their startup thriving under my mentorship, and the countless others who had found inspiration in my story. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the comments on my latest blog post, each one a testament to the power of community and shared experience. "You changed my life," one wrote. "I'm walking through that door," said another. I set the phone down, a sense of fulfillment washing over me. In that moment, I knew that my journey was far from over. There were more speeches to give, more lives to touch, and more stories to share. But I was ready, armed with the resilience and empowerment that had become the cornerstones of my existence. I raised my glass to the skyline, a silent toast to the man I had become and the future that lay before me. As I looked out at the horizon, the endless possibilities stretching out before me, I knew that I would continue to walk forward, embracing each challenge with open arms and an unbreakable spirit. The echoes of betrayal had faded, replaced by the resonant melody of hope, empowerment, and the unyielding pursuit of authenticity.